Welcome back, everybody. This is Dren 608. The game is Unconditional Surrender, designed by Salvatore Vasta, published by GMT Games. This is a continuation of the C.U.C.U strategy campaign against a live opponent. This was the first time that I actually really encountered this and was taken aback on how strong the Axis position can be. He crippled the UK, which is the first part of this C.U., and then the second part is to collapse the USSR. He's done both. He holds a true medlock. I've tried to hold out at Gibraltar and didn't do well. I have landed in Norway, but the weather has not cooperated with us. So if you look at the weather for this year, this turn is going to be February of 1944. It is poor in the mild zone, severe in the cold and the warm zone. So no invasions there, and the important thing about severe in the cold zone is that a lot of this, the northern, right here, in this area, I can't really do anything but maybe get a retreat if I'm lucky. This guy will probably end up in supply at the end of the, end of his turn or whatever. And he does have, like, the entire German Air Force is, like, in the west. He's got one in Norway to get the +1, and then he's got 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 5 there. And there's 5 in the west. I don't think he has any in the east. I'm trying to figure out where all his aircraft are. Anyway, so we're just going to go ahead and get started and start moving through this. The weather as it is means there's not going to be a whole lot of movement anywhere. That's us getting connected, and now I think we're doing production here. So we set up his production. Started going off too far, and I was like, wait a minute, I have to do the West production. The reason why Ireland has 2 is the USA just keeps giving them 1 because they can. We find it amusing that I can give a point to the Irish that they can't use. He's like, well, what are they going to do with it? I said, they're just going to drink it up. It's okay. They can't leave their home country, right? They're because of the neutral cooperation rules, they can't go into Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK home country, and they're a minor. And they can't leave their home country because they would be more than 3 hexes away if I took them by sea and dropped them in France or something. So it's kind of like, yeah, they're kind of pointless. But it's just amusing to keep giving them points to try and encourage them to, leave their home country or whatever, but they won't do it. So, are we? Yeah, no, there was no declarations of war because there's no one left to declare war on. If you want to take a look. The Axis has the Netherlands, Romania, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Yugoslavia, Turkey, Finland, and Iraq on their side. These are all the guys that were on my side, and they all got conquered. And the Soviets have no friends. So, yeah, we're in strategic warfare. We had to go to the combat commitment, which is what we're doing here. Neither one of us committed. And the die roll was a 5 for the Axis and a 5 + 4 for the Soviets. The Axis rolled a 2 + 3. I rolled a 5 + 4, so I chipped him for a factory. So you'll see his factory count loss goes up by 1. I'm like, yay, I chipped a factory. Then we go over to the west, where I did not have any. He is +6. I should have these things up here so you can see this. I don't know why I don't have those. There's the sequence of play, and the attack die roll modifier, and the defender die roll modifier. There we are. So I can't. Oh, I did have 2 bombed markers. I got 2 bombers in last turn in lousy weather. So it is a +6 to a +4. Again, I think we go to combat commitment here, and neither one of us committed. He rolled a 6 + 6 is a 12. Couldn't do any better. I rolled an 8, which is enough to chip me down a factory. So he gets his factory back and I lose mine. So all of that for nothing. Then he did a strategic move. He took a Turkish garrison because I put I have this convoy here that I built there in January, which I can't remember why I waited. Oh, I built it there in December, but in January I think we had severe, so I couldn't invade. And then he's like, I really don't have a good strategic move anywhere, so I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, go ahead and garrison this. He's got this port garrison, so this guy has nowhere to invade that he doesn't have to roll dice anymore. That was the whole point, was to try and make him waste some garrisons down there. Trying to think, did I do a strategic move? No, I didn't have one. I don't think the Soviets had one. He started trying to move armies. I said, wait a minute, I'm not done with Soviets. And then I said, okay, now I'm done with Soviets. So he moved the garrison down here to get close to Casablanca, Spanish garrison. Moves the German Second Army. 2952. I'll find 2952. Not sure what he was doing here. Oh, he decided that he was going to try and push me out of having this sort of semi-surrounded on Kharkov. So he went ahead and did an assault. It's severe, so he goes and throws the ground support because he has two of them. So he uses one for the Yugoslav, and then he has two for the German. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then so it's +4 halved to my +1. He's +4, and I'm +1 because we can't use tanks or airplanes here. Only the ground supports and artilleries. And he didn't want to waste his heavy artillery here because he's expecting to have to use it for a much more important assault, like if I take a city that cuts off his supply or something like that. So he rolled a 2 + 4, halved down to a 3. And if I had rolled a 1, I would have missed, because that would have been a 1, and a 3 to a 1 would have forced me to retreat, but I did manage to roll better than a 1, so 3 halves down to a 2, 3 to 2 is no event, no effect. And his ground support comes back in 2 turns, so he'll have it by the time I'm really ready to do anything. He's talking about infantry units that he wasn't sure that things that might get in trouble, and that one was out of supply where it was sitting. He's like, oh dear, that's out of supply. I need to do something. So he moved south. And then he moved this infantry in here from up here. He went ahead and moved that down there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that keeps them both in supply because he can be supplied down to here with this chain down through Kiev. I can't remember if he did anything else. Well, he moved the armor that was back here, moved it up into the line, and the German army. And then instead of this army being here, where am I at? Oh dear, what's that? Get that off my map. The wrong key. Instead of it being there, he moves it over to here to keep him. He's trying to make sure that I can't get a 3-hex attack on anything, which is the way you defend in severe and or poor. Is if the Soviets can only attack with 2 units in a hex, you're pretty safe. I mean, it takes an extreme result usually, especially in severe. It takes like a 6-1 or a 5-1 split or something like that. It takes very long odds for you to move anybody. So, that's the way you defend in this kind of weather. And then he did the same thing with the Panzer. because he's trying to make sure, because what he's going to do next is he's going to get the Italian away from being able to be attacked by Soviets, because the Italians are a liability in that case. Yes, they have a tanks marker, but in severe they don't have anything, so they'd be zeros. And I might be tempted to go ahead and try it +1 to 0, just to try and break this river, break the Dnieper, and force him to have to do something about this pocket that's back here. Okay. Moves Vassal up to keep that armored from having to retreat, and then I think he takes that bomber and goes and takes the fighter and whacks the American bomber. I'm at like -4, 5, 6, +1. I think I'm at -5. What's the weather here? Oh, the weather's poor here, so I'm actually at -6, and he's at -1. Why is he at +2? There we go. We're just going through the things. He's a 1. 2 - 1 is a 1, so he gets 1 sortie on me. And he chooses not to go after him. Does his movement, moves him up close there so that he can bomb my bomber out of existence. And I think he uses this one, if I remember right. He uses the one in Norway to go after the Americans instead of the British. Or did he go after the British? Oh, he went after the British, I'm sorry. And then he brings another airplane up. You'll see he's stopping at like 2s here. This one's here to give him a +1 and to make my life miserable. These here that are in northern Denmark are here to try and mitigate any shenanigans that I'm trying to pull off. You'll notice he still has an armored unit sitting here. That's sort of a reserve. If I do somehow manage to get a breakthrough, then this armored unit can just run up and stop any kind of shenanigans again. And then he says, I don't know why I have the Swede over here thinking it needs to defend Narvik, so he's marching it down to where the front line really is, which makes sense. And he puts the Romanian sort of in a second line blocking position is what he's basically doing. And then he started to go into the supply phase and said, wait a minute, I need to move the Italian air here. And then it was 2 to here. And then he's like, the desert is actually always fair, so I could invade there. And if you look over here in the corner, I do have, this fleet could move over here and then do an invasion like to Cairo. So he's going to be supplying that, and I can't invade over here because it's severe, but I can invade in the desert. So he's got to start watching that. We discussed a lot of this kind of stuff. So now he's doing supply. He's like, I'm going to supply those two guys because, hey, you can invade there. And then the airplane as well. Just putting sorties on the fleets. This guy had to go to low supply. He didn't want to supply him because I couldn't invade, because that's in the warm zone. We go into the Western Action subphase. I really didn't have a lot I could do. I went ahead and tried to run a bomber, I think. So I moved a fighter down here to start trying to maybe be able to deal with his fighters next turn. Naval unit. '21, '26. Where the heck is 21, '26? It's way up here. Oh. Oh, I know what that is. I believe this is me doing shifting. So I basically run in here and say, go ahead, use up a sortie on your airplanes to stop me. He's like, no, I'll shoot you when you get 2 mets with the Hanover guy, who should be +2. So he was a +2. I was going to be a 6 no matter what, or a 1 no matter what. So he just had to roll, and he rolled a 2, -1. It shouldn't have been a -1, but he rolled a 2. Should have been at 2 + 2, which was 4. Halves down to a 2. A 2 is an asterisk result against a 1, so I got my bound marker into nets. Then I think I ran again, and I said, well, we're just going to go in here again. And he tried again and rolled a 3 -1, because now it really was a -1 in poor weather. And that's also a 2, so I actually get away with 2 bound markers again, which we always throw him down in the Alps so that we can actually see the cities when he wants to build things. And stacking is an issue sometimes when you lose track of where units are. And then I'm like, okay, let's do silly attacks. I'm +1 to 0. Oh no, I'm +1 for American halved. I don't know why I haven't. Oh, and then I'm -1 for being in the mountain. So it's like 0 to 0. I need a split, and I don't get it. 4 halved, 6 halved. So that didn't work. And I'm like, okay, this is poor weather, so let's try this. Attack here using the airplane. I think. Yeah, so I was a net +1 because I'm 1 for armor, 1 for American, 1 for airplane, -1 for the mountains, -1 for the weather. So I'm net +1 to his. He's -2. He's 0. He was not going to play his tanks marker there. He's saving it for the east. So I managed to roll a 6. He managed to roll a 2 + 1 is a 3. So hey, I took a hex. Made him move back a hex. Yay! Look at that. I gained a hex in Norway. Now I think I'm doing. Yeah, I think I'm doing supply at this point because I have 3 supply here. He did some. And he says, well, if you're gonna do, if you're gonna escort both of those, go right ahead. And then I'm escorting up here. I was supplying the 1st Canadian first. He says, go ahead. And then I think it's this time. I think I'm supplying the RAF. Can't remember which one I'm supplying. Because I'm +2 for Americans, -2 for weather, -4 for sorties, and he's -1. And he rolled a 1, so he missed me. And I said, well, you still have the Italians. And he's like, oh, that's right. I have the Italians sitting in Antwerp. So he comes out to come after me as well. He's a -2, and I'm a -5. He got a 2. So I managed to get my supply through for the airplane. And then I came out at 5 sorties for the American infantry. He came back out. He's a -3. Managed to roll a 6, which is what he needed to get. And that stopped the supply for the Americans. So now the American army is at low supply. So things are not going well. So now we're over to the Soviets, and I started trying to figure out if I could do throwing partisans, and if I did all this. We did the math, and it really came down to a 1/3 shot. So I said, this is silly. It's pretty much the same with or without the partisans. I basically need a huge split because of the halving of the die rolls. So I'm at net +2 to his +2. And I rolled a 1, he rolled a 5, so it was a good thing. He's like, well, if those die rolls had been swapped, it would have mattered. And I said, well, if they'd have been swapped, you'd have been a 2, and I'd have been a 4. You'd have been retreated, and I still could have used the partisans and this guy here to be, +0 to -2. So, better that I didn't use the partisans initially because of the terrible die roll. And then I think I'm doing a bunch of, again, these are all going to be like +2 to +2s. 5 halved to a 3. And he rolls a 3 halved to a 2, so nothing happens. I go ahead and attack here. Oh no, I don't. I don't think I do I? Yeah, I did. Both of these units, it's net +1 -1 for the woods is a 0 to 0. Again, needing a split. I got a 6 half to a 3. He got a 3 half to a 2, so he doesn't go anywhere. Needing to get a 1 or a 2 when I got that 6. Then we go up here, and it's going to be, again, the same kind of thing. It's +2 to +2, a 1 to a 6, so I don't make that one. We go ahead and try and push the armored unit behind the sniper. Again, trying to seal the fate here. And I'm not getting any die rolls, 5s and 5s. You know, he's matching my die rolls. The thing is, if I win this one, and I win this one, he is now getting desperately close to having all of this out here cut off. Okay? Because once I get to here, all I need to do is get a unit sitting on this down here, and all of these guys are cut off. They have to fight their way out and stop me from cutting his supply. So he's getting dangerously close to... if I definitely pierce the sniper, he definitely has to get those guys out of there. If he's going to hold there through March, I don't know. I know if it were me, having held through February, I would sacrifice the 2nd German Army, and I would get all these guys back here to form a proper line across the Dnieper to keep me in March and April, where it's going to be at best poor, to try and keep my advances to a minimum. So that when a fair weather comes, you really want them to have to fight across the Dnieper. You want the Soviets to have to fight across the Dnieper in the first fair weather turn, because you get to go first with fair weather with the Germans, which means you can hit like a guard's tank unit, not in the hopes of eliminating it, but in the hopes of flipping it. And if you can do that, if you can flip a guard's tank unit or two, severely limits what the Soviets can do, because that's their offensive punch right there. Those things are +3s. Throw them and an aircraft in, they're a +5 against any given hex, +4 going across the river. I do have a surprise attack marker in my hand, so I could drop it to help me get across the river, which means I could be like +5 to +2s. And he and I are of the opinion, and we're not sure that we're going to see if it works again. It worked the last time he did this, but almost the entire German Air Force, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's another one here, 7. The entire German Air Force is facing the west. God's own Air Force is scary as heck. There's 6. That's a phrase that another opponent of mine a long time ago coined the phrase for the Allied Air Forces as God's own Air Force, because they have 6 fighters and 3 bombers. So technically they have 9 ground support available aircraft. And if the Germans have aircraft over in the east, they're going to be massively outnumbered. Now, by having 7 of their aircraft over here, 6 on the mainland, 1 in Norway, by having 6 aircraft over here, it's now you have as many fighters as I do, which means my only edge is the few sorties I have left on my bombers, and I've been using them to try and maintain my production with the UK, which failed last time, obviously. So, you know, is this a good idea? We don't know. In the past, the last game that we did this, I couldn't push the Germans. The qualitative +2 for the entire German army makes it very hard for the Soviets to make any kind of real headway. They might make a minor breakthrough, but the Germans usually have enough extra movement and ground units and things to stop whatever you just started. And even at, like I was saying, I can be like +5 to +2. That's not a very good chance of getting like a DD. You might get a DR and get a DR. You might push them around a bit, but you don't really get to eliminate them until you can isolate them. And as long as the Germans maintain a straight, non-isolated line, then they are good. By the way, one of the things that we did point out that he was like, this was a dumb thing. He didn't want to have a 3-hex attack on there, so he didn't leave an infantry unit where this shock army is. And he probably should have. Go ahead and let me have the 3-hex attack, because now I have sort of a bulge. He's going to have to put somebody here to prevent me from getting a 3-hex attack on this one. So, we might as well have been there and just retreated a hex if I... Because in severe, the best I'm going to get is a retreat. I'm not going to get any DDs. So, and they could very well have just held that point altogether. So now he's got, things to worry about. I'm kind of across the upper Dnieper and the lower Duna, which is typical because this is a very hard gap to hold for the Germans. Neither one of us has figured out a way to do it without throwing German air support in there. And if you throw German air support in there, then again, the whole idea is you want to stymie any kind of threat from the west for as long as possible, because their Air Force, if they get it on the continent, they are going to dominate you and just start bombing factories left, right, and center, because their aircraft will be able to knock out your aircraft. And once they knock out your aircraft, guess what? The bombers just fly free, and then it's like 4 or 6 bombed markers a turn. You don't want that happening until the end of 1944. Come the fall of 1944, you don't care anymore. Usually even in September, you'll start moving the German Air Force to the east. Because you don't care anymore. You'll lose 1 a turn, you have all the extra factories. You're going to be in the 30s for almost the entire rest of the game. And that's enough for you to be able to reorganize your armies, build defensive lines, and whatnot. Right now, he's very light on German infantry here. He does have an armored unit that he's thinking about just keeping in France for counterattack purposes. Another thing that he's probably not going to care about, really, is if I go ahead and try and invade Spain or Portugal or something to try and get a foothold over here. He's like, go ahead, I don't care. Because the game is Germany. The game is not his peripheral allies. So, at this point, Turkey was something that would flank him on the Eastern Front, so he did need to take care of making sure I couldn't just pull off a flanking invasion. The same thing, he's got somebody sitting in Tallinn because of the same thing. He's got a German sitting here. It's like, I probably should get rid of that German. I said, the minute you remove him, you'll have a convoy built up here, and then you'll just have to send somebody back. So why bother? Just leave him there and low supply. He's fulfilling his purpose of keeping the flanks from being taken in. He is a little light on physical ground units right now in the Soviet Union, but he should be okay because the weather is going to be garbage. He has 2 or 3 turns to try and rectify that, and then he was going to get the first para at the beginning of the fair weather turns. So if he can maintain his line, he will be just fine. All right. That's what we were talking about, that there. And then I think, yeah, and then I did my, so here I did a +1 to a +2. The reason being is if I get a lucky split, 6-1 split type thing, I can get him to be a DR, and he didn't give himself the choice to retreat by putting Vassal here. Vassal prevents a retreat. If I can get a 6-1 split here, I flip him, and then I have a 0 to 0 again with a 5 or a 6-1 split. Then I can actually eliminate that armored unit. It's a long shot, and I did my part. I rolled a 6+1, and he said, "Nah, I'll roll a 3." So if he'd have rolled a 1 there, it would have been an interesting issue for him going forward, but didn't work. Because that would have been someplace I could have dropped a heavy artillery at that point to try and guarantee that I would get him. And I think, I'm not sure I did anything else. Where am I at with my production? I'm down to 12 with the Soviets, and I don't know where I'm attacking him. Oh, I think I'm attacking him here. And 6 and 6, so nothing happens there. And then he said, "Why don't you do this?" I said, "Okay, we'll do it." So I'm -1. He's a -2. Just trying to get a retreat. I got a 2. He got a 1. So nothing happened. Then we went to the supply phase. No supply phase. I don't think anybody had anything silly to do. Now we're just getting back our replacements. So he's replacing his convoys and his airplane for the Italians. Thought about it and said, no, I don't want to do the Italians. He wanted to do the fleet up here because he's coming to realize that that fleet is very advantageous for cutting off my supply in Norway and pretty much just ending the entire Norway adventure. And then he's doing the German one. It's just getting all of his airplanes down. Then we go into... I was doing the British first, so I could get all my points straightened out. As you see, the factory points are. Then I'm doing the US because I can. And then I had built, I think the build was really this on the build queue. I think he had an infantry to build somewhere. Or did he do that last turn? I think he did that last turn. So we're getting the stuff off the turn track into our things. He got back a submarine, so now he has 2 of them. There's a surprise attack marker, heavy artillery. I get my ultra and a convoy and another army. The convoy should actually be at 4 sorties. And then he rolled the weather, and it was a 2-4-3. And a 2-4-3 in March is poor in the cold, which is what I needed. I need to be able to push some of his units around. A 4 in the mild zone is also poor. And then a 3 in the warm zone is also poor. So I have poor everywhere. And the weather track should reflect that here. And we're done. Oops. Cancel this. All right. So there you have it. That's February of 44. I gained a hex in Norway. I am set up to try and do some serious intervention on these German aircraft here because they are getting rather annoying, to say the least. He's got a good counterpunch if I invade into France right now. And I have like 3 of my armies committed in Norway, so I don't have a lot of armies to invade into France with. I've got the 8th Army up here. I'll have Patton probably moved into Ireland next turn. So I got to get this convoy down to 0. I got to get Force H repaired and stuff. So I have a lot of units I have to get repaired here. I have a convoy here that needs to get repaired, so I can put a fleet there so I can actually do an invasion, and so on and so forth. So I have to kind of get things set up here to do my invading. And I just haven't decided whether I'm going to try to force the issue up here, like by doing an invasion at Bergen, and then taking away his port so he doesn't have an airplane up there, and then try and force my way through. Airplanes based in Denmark can do a lot of damage to me. And the fact that he has the Italian fleet here and I don't have enough air to deal with him is becoming a problem. Next turn. Where's my other British Air Force? I'm missing a British Air Force. I should have 3. I have 1 down there. Oh, it's up in Norway. So again, I'm in that situation of I have airplanes in places that are not really doing me any good. So poor weather, we'll see if I can push one last time to try and, get semi mini breakthrough here someplace. I'm not going to be able to push with the Americans. So it's going to be come down to whether the first Canadians can blow up this thing and move southward to try and cut people off from supply. I have a feeling he's going to move that armored unit right into that junction to keep everybody in supply, and then I'll be in trouble because I won't be able to do anything. Just cut things off. So yeah, it's not going well here in Norway, and he might very well end up cutting all my supply completely because I'm going to have to try and run these guys out in poor weather. That Italian might be able to just stuff me back into Trondheim, and then all three of those guys would go into no supply. Low supply, and no supply, and at that point I probably will just stick the first Canadian back in here and remove these two guys and just say, call it a day. We'll stay at Stavanger, but the rest of us are leaving. Yeah, things are not going well for the West. I am going to be like at 28 production next turn. So there is that, but he's going to be like at 40, 38 himself or something. So the Germans have way too much production for the West to be able to do anything against him. And he's getting into a position now where he can actually just negate my bombing offensive altogether. So it's going to be a matter of me trying to negate his fighter cover, I guess. Start the fighter battle now, which he can afford to fight me with. All right. If you like what you see, hit the thumbs up button. If you really like to see, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notify bell, be notified when I upload videos and or schedule streams. We will continue on with March next week. We're playing about once a week now. We're back to our regular thing. We'd like to see if this this end game strategy for the Germans still works. So it's going to be a matter of how lucky can I be with the Soviets if I'm going to force him to bring some air over to deal with the Soviets, to stop any offensive that they have. And if I can do that, then maybe maybe I have a chance of getting onto the continent and actually doing something with the West instead of having to try and go through Norway. We'll see how it works out. Until we meet again, stay safe and bye-bye.